Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Ryan and I'm a former Royal Marines Commando from the United Kingdom, and today we're going to be reacting to a fantastic video called What Russia Faces Primer to Ukraine's Ground Army. So it's going to showcase the Ukraine's military, I think, anyway, and it's from a channel called, let me figure it out, Battle Order. Make sure you go check them guys out. The links will be in the description for that, troops, okay? But this should be a good one. Make sure you like the video before we get started. If you haven't done so already, then subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out, guys. But other than that, I just want to say a special thank you to the members for joining the club. If you want to join the club as well, link will be in the description, guys. But let's just get straight into this one and dissect the video to see what it's all about.
The conflict in Ukraine has been Europe's worst in recent memory. Today, to give you some perspective on the forces at play, we're taking a look at the composition of Ukraine's conventional ground warfare units. For the purposes of this video, we're focusing on three branches: the ground forces, which we'll be referring to as the Army, the air assault forces, and the Naval Infantry. But first, I'd like to talk about our sponsor, Curiosity.
Right, curiosity, we're going to straight into this.
First, there are few basic types of maneuver units in the Ukrainian army. The majority are combined arms brigades, with a smaller number of separate battalions. In the army, the most numerous maneuver units are its mechanized brigades, which are broadly equivalent to Russia's motor rifles. Generally speaking, they're mechanized infantry mounted in mostly Soviet-era BTRs and BMPs. These brigades have full-spectrum combined arms support, with a self-propelled artillery group, engineers.
Okay, so it's shown us how the Ukrainian military's formed in a nutshell, and I wouldn't expect it to be too different to most Western militaries. Again, not too dissimilar to the British military, how it's formed. There'll be different variations of different things, different terminologies and stuff, but overall it'll formulate the same kind of layout, so to speak. Okay, I'd expect that from any kind of European military group, really.
Air defense, and other service and support units. In terms of maneuver, they usually consist of 3 mechanized infantry battalions, 1 tank battalion equipped with T-64Bs or BVs, and 1 or 2 motorized infantry battalions. Ukrainian motorized infantry are descended from Territorial Defense battalions, which were formed to counter separatists in Donbass. Beginning in late 2014, these were converted into...
Okay, so what we see in there is certain parts and certain elements of their military structure being formed as a result of skirmishes that they've had to face. So that shows their reactive capability to how can we change something, all right, to suit the current needs. And I think that's one of the most important things for any effective military is to be adaptable in nature, is to be able to rise to the challenges that face you now and in the future, instead of holding on to the past of how you used to be. If the Royal Marines, for instance, if we held on to the past too much, we would be doing things, that we're just not fit to do in the future. So, we're an amphibious infantry, but we've got to be able to adapt to different situations that occur around the world. Afghanistan and Iraq was a prime example of that. We went away from our amphibious roots slightly, and that amphibious infantry capability, boots on the ground type mentality came through. So we're quite adaptable, and Ukraine has shown that there by forming different parts of their brigades and structures based on current events, what's going on in and around, and what they're subject to. It's quite a smart move, but you'd be surprised at how many military organizations around the world don't actually adapt to ongoing crises and situations to be able to make themselves better. You'd be surprised.
To motorized infantry formations mounted in lighter vehicles. Motorized infantry are also contained within their own motorized infantry brigades, which generally have comparable support to mechanized brigades. However, their 3 infantry battalions are motorized. They only have 1 tank company rather than a whole tank battalion, and their artillery is towed rather than self-propelled. Similar in structure are Ukraine's Mountain Assault Brigades. Specializing in operations in the Carpathian Mountains, they either have 3 Mountain Assault Battalions supported by a tank battalion and motorized infantry, or a mix of mountain and mechanized units. Less numerous than the infantry are Ukraine's tank brigades, which are similar to the mechanized brigades, except sporting 3 tank battalions, 1 mechanized battalion, and 1 motorized battalion. As to how these units are allocated, Ukraine's army is divided into 4 geographically based military districts that coordinate all units within their areas. These are Operational Command West, North, South, and East.
So we've seen Operational Command North and Operational Command East. East and North have been hammered the past few weeks with the Russian invasion. If you don't know, then where the hell have you been for the past 2 weeks? Operation Command South is taking a bit of a hit. We've seen escalations happening in the past few days, actually, in terms of their amphibious capability building up. And in terms of their amphibious capability, I'm talking about Russia. They've put naval fleet in the area, and maybe it's for a large scale assault. I'm not too sure. Large scale amphibious assault might be on the cards. They'll certainly be using that amphibious capability to the best of their ability if they want to take full command. East and North, like I say, have been hit really bad at the moment. We haven't seen as much west side, but that's because of the borders that the west side of the Ukraine shares. Poland, for one. That's a bit of a corridor for the refugees that we're seeing coming out of the area, unfortunately. This is upheaved millions of people. There's loads of people now victims directly of war. And as a result, have had to leave their homes and they're fleeing to neighbouring countries. Moldova, for one, in this area here, just near Operational Command South. If Ukraine gets taken, Moldova is, I don't want to say next, but it seems to be that would be the obvious thing to do. It's such a small area. I mean, we look at what happened in Crimea in 2014, then, well, Moldova, it's quite a neutral state as well. So I think the same fate will come their way, guys. But I'll let you decide. What do you think? Let me know in the chat.
Each operational command has a slightly different mix of garrison units, but they all have the same support elements. On the screen now is a list of the support if you want to pause and read through it. But as for maneuver, going west to east, OC West has 4 maneuver brigades. The first is the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade, which was formed in 2015 near the Ukrainian Carpathians with 3 Mountain Assault Battalions. Also in the Carpathians is the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade, which, while being half mechanized infantry, has 1 Mountain Assault Battalion as well. To their north are the 14th and 24th Mechanized Brigades.
Okay, so we're hearing the terminology, different types of active ground forces. We've got mountain assault brigades. I think that's due to the nature of the land in Ukraine. Obviously, the region, undulating terrain, the environment, some of the harshest places in Europe. When you look at the weather systems that can be formed there, it makes sense to have a mountain assault brigade just in case. You need to protect yourself in these situations, what we're seeing right now. And normally, mountain brigades, infantry soldiers who are apt in the mountains, normally, not always, we see that they are probably the finest soldiers among us because the training involved is a lot harder. So you are getting a more specialised infantry by having that mountain capability. Not always, again, but that's just the way I think of it. I know it's certainly the case in the Royal Marines. The mountain leaders are the specialised infanteers of the Royal Marines, and the Royal Marines are already specialist amphibious infanteers. So just imagine them as the next level up. Some say they're the equivalent of special forces. They're just not in a special forces capacity role. I would agree with that. I think they're a fantastic breed of men.
Moving on, OC North, which includes the capital of Kiev, has 2 mechanized brigades, 1 motorized brigade, 1 tank brigade, and 1 separate tank battalion. The 1st Tank Brigade in particular appears to be equipped with the modernized T-64BM Bulat and BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles. OC South, meanwhile, has the lightest garrison units of the 4 commands. It's responsible for the southwestern coast of the country, including Crimea. The command includes 3 motorized brigades similar to the one in the north and 1 mechanized brigade. And lastly, OC East is the largest of the commands. The command has 4 mechanized brigades and 1 tank brigade. Combined, the Army's active force has a total of 2 mountain, 9 mechanized, 2 tank, and 4 motorized brigades. In addition to these active units, the Army has Territorial Defense brigades that it created in 2015. Territorial Defense units are sort of a light militia consisting of local defense detachments.
So I wouldn't necessarily agree with him saying it's like a local militia. These individuals will be trained soldiers, capable of being integrated with regular troops at a moment's notice. They're just part-time. It's as simple as that. I think we need to move away from the old understanding of what territorial or reserve forces means. It used to mean that you weren't as skilled, weren't as trained, but now it just simply means you're not full-time, you're part-time. Okay, it's the same thing. So those elements, those reserve forces will have day jobs, normal jobs and careers that they want to pursue, and the reserve forces will, bolster the numbers if need be, and they can slip straight into position. They are trained, they are apt, they are capable. But I think that's just an old stereotype for all reserve forces among the world militaries. It's certainly not the case in Great Britain anymore. Our reserve forces are fine. Okay, they bring the numbers up, they bolster the numbers, and these guys will do exactly the same thing. And we've seen that coming into play right now in the Ukraine crisis.
Charged with the defense of their region, guard duty, disaster response, and in the case of invasion, armed resistance against occupiers. Their brigades generally consist of 6 territorial defense battalions, a mortar battery, and modest combat support. OC West has 8 of these brigades, OC North has 7, OC South has 5, and OC East has another 5. At the national level, the 4th Army Reserve Corps also supports the Army by maintaining a strategic reserve. This includes 3 tank brigades, 2 mechanized brigades, 2 motorized infantry brigades, and 2 artillery brigades. Reserve units are typically less well equipped and less ready than active units, and are usually...
Alright, so now he's talking about reserves. He was talking about a different component. I apologize. So the reserve component, again, I'll disagree, because it's a stigma that's been attached to reserve forces that they are not as trained. They might not go through as regular training as regular forces, but they are trained. Okay, they are trained guys. It's a bit like anything you do. If you're a part-time director or a full-time director of a company, will you have more impact as a full-time director? Of course. Is the part-time director capable of slipping straight into the swing of things? Of course, yeah, no problem. They might have to do a bit more training to get up to scratch, but it's not going to be a forever thing. There's regular forces in the military right now who don't do infantry style training, who might not be up to scratch. It doesn't mean to say that they're any better than the reserve forces. It's a myth, guys. Okay, that's my personal opinion anyway.
Meant to replace battlefield casualties. Of note, portions of the tank brigades have been equipped with the modified T-72s that were taken out of storage to supplement the standard T-64s. In addition to the rank-and-file army troops, Ukraine operates a separate air assault branch which acts as an elite, high-readiness mechanized infantry force. They were originally part of the army, but were made independent in 2016.
So this seems like the equivalent of what the Royal Marines and the Parachute Regiment of the UK are. Although we are infanteers, Royal Marines pertain to the Navy, the Parachute Regiment pertain to the Army. They are technically not separate, but they're seen as separate entities because of their level of eliteness. Okay, we are a couple of steps ahead of regular infanteers. Now you'll have regular infanteers state the contrary, but trust me, it's a fact. It's an established fact that the Parachute Regiment and the Royal Marines are an arduous course. They're technically an arduous course, and yeah, there's only them available. All right, you just got to look at special forces support groups and who actually supports special forces on operations. It's the Royal Marines and it's the Parachute Regiment and a small contingent of RAF Reg, which is that's even debatable, guys. Okay.
Russian VDV, Ukrainian air assault brigades are highly mechanized, including armored personnel carriers, IFVs, and their best tank in widespread service, the T-80BV. Air assault forces include 1 airborne brigade, 6 air assault brigades, and a self-propelled artillery brigade. The 25th Airborne Brigade is distinguished by its use of paradroppable platforms, with infantry mounted in BMD-1, BMD-2, and BTR-D airborne armored vehicles. The air assault brigades, meanwhile, are more akin to high-readiness mechanized infantry, having been converted from air mobile brigades through the addition of a tank company to each brigade. Air assault brigades receive preferential treatment as far as equipment goes, with many of its units mounted in a higher proportion of indigenously produced BTR-3s and BTR-4s, as well as later Mark Soviet BTRs. Additionally, when tanks started to be added to the brigades in 2015, they received T-80s, compared to the Army, which mainly uses the less modern T-64, supplemented by T-72s and a very small number of Oplot and Oplot-Ms. And lastly, Naval Infantry are another type of special troop similar in stature to the air assault forces, but directly subordinate to the Ukrainian Navy, specializing in amphibious landings and the
Yeah, these is exactly the idea behind this is very, very, very similar to the concept behind the Royal Marines and the Parachute Regiment. It's to have groups that pertain to the Army, groups that pertain to the Navy, to be able to do roles specific in nature to whatever group they're pertaining to. So Navy, amphibious, Army, airborne, that type of stuff. And have a more specialized individual on the ground doing more complex operations and have a higher command on the ground. Simple as that. So that's what this comes from. Although they might not be called commandos or anything like that, they're a specialized variant of infantry, guys, and that's what we're seeing. Similar in nature to what we have in Great Britain and among other militaries on the globe, guys. Okay.
Defense of naval bases in littoral islands. All of their major units are stationed on the Black Sea. The force as a whole currently consists of the 35th and 36th Naval Infantry Brigades, the 406th Artillery Brigade, and 32nd Rocket Artillery Regiment. Each brigade has 3 Naval Infantry battalions supported by a tank battalion equipped with T-80s and similar combined arms support as Army brigades, including a full artillery group. In the future, the ultimate plan is to bring the Naval Infantry to 4 maneuver brigades. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video where we take...
I really enjoyed that video, guys. I'm not going to lie. Again, that channel is called Battle Order. Make sure you go give them a follow, guys. The link to this video will be in the description. Without these type of channels, we wouldn't be able to do these types of reactions. So they're pretty cool, guys. Not going to lie. But yeah, if you like my reaction, my take to that, Ukraine's ground army. So to anyone thinking that we're talking about just because it's Ukraine and you might not have that much knowledge on it, we talk primarily about the United States and Great Britain on this channel. We all know what our capabilities are, okay? The blueprints came from our militaries way back when. So that's already been said. That's said and done. Now, the Ukraine's military, it is formed. It is a professional outfit. And they've got a good command structure. They've got a good structure in general of how they operate, and not too dissimilar to how most militaries around the world who are effective would be formed. Okay, so I think the game changer with regards this isn't necessarily the structure. We understand they've got that mapped down. It's the individual on the ground and the purpose in which they're fighting for. And in recent times, the past week or two, we've seen that the Ukraine has a very specific purpose to fight for at this moment in time, and they're fighting for their families, for their land. And when you're messing with an individual who is fighting for their families and land, you'll see a better individual. All right, than if he was fighting in someone else's back garden. Yeah, so I think the Ukraine by default will be more formidable in their own country just because they have to be. All right, so what Russia faces, I think they face a very, very real threat. We've seen that they have lost a lot of men. I think the recent reports is over 13,500 men up to this point. The infrastructure that they've lost, the vehicles and equipment is significant. So, yeah, the Ukraine is not to be messed with, and we're seeing that right now. But if you enjoyed this, guys, please smash the like button, drop us a comment below, and I'll see you hopefully in the live stream later. Take it easy, troops. Peace.